They thought I was just a 58-year-old shadow in their penthouse, a useless, expired woman. They were wrong. You should never, ever stomp on a cobra just because you think it's too old to strike. They didn't know I still had venom, and I was about to use every last drop. My name is Margaret. I am 58 years old. For 30 years. I was an administrative clerk at the public library. A quiet life of filing cards and whispering patrons. Then, I took an early retirement. 6 months later, the letter arrived. The owner of my rented apartment building in Nashville, my home for nearly 2 decades, had sold out to a development corporation. I had 60 days to leave. My only son, Leo, and his wife, Sabrina, called it a blessing. "It's perfect timing, Mom," Leo said, his voice slick with tech world optimism. "Move in with us. We have more than enough space." Their space was a penthouse in the Gulch, a glass tower that punctured the sky. It was less a home and more a statement. White walls, white furniture, floors so polished they looked wet, and windows that showcased all of Nashville, a city I suddenly felt no part of. I knew, from the moment I set my one cardboard box of possessions on their pristine Italian marble floor, that I was a problem. I was a scuff mark on their perfect white canvas. So, I tried to disappear by becoming useful. I cleaned. I cooked. I tried to replicate the life of a servant I'd never been. It was never right. Sabrina, a lifestyle influencer who spent her days photographing expensive skincare products, treated me with a polite, Arctic disdain. She never shouted. She corrected. "Oh, Margaret?" She'd sigh, picking a bottle of cleaner out of my hand. "We don't use this. The ammonia is toxic to the aura. I only use the zero-waste, lavender-infused concentrate from that place in East Nashville." She would watch me cook, her arms crossed. "Is that turmeric organic?" "The color looks a bit flat. And please, don't use the aluminum pans. The particle transfer is just... No." I became a ghost in their home, but the real ghost was my son. Leo, the rising star project manager, was surgically attached to his phone. He was always on a critical call, or running a diagnostic, or just swamped. Mom. He would walk past me, his eyes glued to a screen, his thumbs flying. He hadn't looked me in the eye since I'd moved in. I would say good morning, and he would grunt, his AirPods already wedged in his ears. I felt invisible, like a piece of dusty, outdated furniture they had inherited and didn't know how to throw away. The silence in that apartment was deafening, broken only by Sabrina's high, false laugh as she recorded a video, or Leo's sharp, staccato typing. In those long, sterile afternoons, I found my mind drifting back to Arthur, my ex-husband. He'd passed away several years ago. Our divorce, decades back, was a quiet, sad affair. I'd always believed he'd left me with almost nothing, just a pittance. And I had built my small, careful life on top of that assumption. I was used to having little. I was not used to feeling worthless. The simmering tension, the unspoken truth of my presence, finally boiled over. Sabrina was hosting a dinner party, not for friends, for partners, brand ambassadors, other influencers. I spent the day cleaning, hoping to be helpful. The apartment smelled of roasted garlic and rosemary from a caterer. My cooking was not allowed. That evening, as the sun set and the apartment glowed, Sabrina found me in the hallway. She was wearing a dress that looked like liquid silver. "Margaret," she said, her voice bright and brittle. She didn't look at me, but at her reflection in the hall mirror, adjusting an earring. Tonight is crucial for my brand, the aesthetic, the entire energy. It all has to be flawless. I smoothed my simple knit shirt. Of course, dear. I'll stay in the kitchen, out of the way. She finally turned to me, her smile like a dentist's. Actually, it would be better if you just stayed in your room for the whole evening. You don't really fit the visual we're creating. I stared at her, grounded. I was a 58-year-old woman, being hidden away like a dirty secret. I see, I managed to say. Great, she chirped and pivoted on her heel, her phone already out. Her face instantly transformed into a mask of joy for her online followers. It's all coming together. After the humiliation of that party, I spent 2 days in my room, a quiet, simmering anger, the kind that burns cold, was building in me. I felt the need to do something. Not for them, but for me. For the memory of a life where I mattered. I decided to cook. I would make the one thing that had always connected me to my son, my old-fashioned beef and barley stew. It was the dish he had begged for every birthday, the one he'd claimed was the only cure for a cold. It was the food of his childhood, of a time before he became this. I went out and bought the ingredients myself, using my own small savings. I bought thick-cut short ribs, fresh rosemary, thyme, 2 heads of garlic. The kitchen was my enemy's territory, but I felt a defiant right to it. For 4 hours, I worked. I seared the meat. I chopped the vegetables. I let it simmer. The sterile, white kitchen began to smell like a home. The rich aroma of garlic and herbs, of slow-cooked beef, pushed back against the chemical scent of Sabrina's diffusers. It was a smell of substance, of history. I was stirring the pot, a thick, heavy Dutch oven, when the front door opened. Sabrina swept in, her yoga mat tucked under her arm. She stopped dead in the kitchen entryway, her nose wrinkled, as if she'd smelled sewage. "What is that?" she demanded. Her voice was flat, sharp. "It's stew," I said, my hand tightening on the wooden spoon. "For dinner? For Leo? It's his." She walked forward, not toward me, but toward the pot. She peered over the rim, her face a mask of pure disgust. What is this? Margaret? It looks like actual garbage." "It's beef barley," I said, my voice trembling. "Beef." She said the word like it was a disease. My God, the calories, the animal fat. "Are you trying to poison us?" "The smell alone it's like a poor person's house. It's thick." She waved a hand in front of her face. "This is what I was talking about. This is the energy. You cannot cook this. This slop in my home. It tastes like poison. I just thought Leo would—" "Leo?" she scoffed. "Leo eats what I tell him to eat. We are clean." Before I could process it, she grabbed 2 oven mitts from a drawer. She was strong, her influencer body honed by personal trainers. She grabbed the heavy Dutch oven, the pot I had spent all afternoon tending to, and lifted it. "Sabrina, no, stop." She marched to the stainless steel trash receptacle, the kind that opens with a foot pedal. She stomped on the pedal, and with a grunt of effort, she inverted the pot. 4 hours of my work, the rich stew, the vegetables, the memories, all of it crashed into the bin with a wet, sickening sound. It splattered onto coffee grounds and discarded protein bar wrappers. I just stared. I couldn't breathe. The pot clanged as she dropped it on the floor next to the trash. "Clean that up," she ordered, breathing heavily. "The smell is going to linger." And that is when Leo walked in. He stopped, just as his wife had. He saw the scene. He saw me, standing frozen, tears blurring my vision, my hand still clutching the spoon. He saw his wife, her face flushed with anger, wiping her hands on a towel. And he saw my pot, my heavy cast-iron pot, discarded on the floor by the trash. My heart leapt. He would see. He would finally see her. I turned to him, my voice a broken whisper. "Leo, son, she threw it all away." Leo looked at Sabrina. He looked at me, his eyes skating past mine, refusing to lock on. He looked at the pot. He didn't yell. He didn't gasp. He didn't defend me. He sighed. It was a long, exasperated sigh. The sigh of a man burdened. He ran a hand through his expensive, styled hair. Then, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "Leo," I pleaded. The screen lit up his face. He tapped it. A loud, obnoxious electronic tune blared, and he put the phone to his ear. He turned his back to me. "Hey, Greg, what is happening? Man." His voice was loud, booming, artificially cheerful. "No, nothing. Just, home stuff. Background noise." He walked out of the kitchen, toward the giant windows, laughing into his phone about some project, some launch, some meaningless data point. He deliberately increased his volume, his laughter filling the sterile air, drowning out the sound of my heart breaking. Sabrina watched him go, a small, triumphant smile playing on her lips. She looked back at me, her eyes cold. And then she, too. Dee walked away. I stood there, alone. The silence that Leo left behind, the silence he had created with his noise, was far more brutal than Sabrina's words, more violent than her actions. She was just a cruel stranger. He was my son. He had seen me humiliated, had seen my love thrown in the garbage, and he had chosen, consciously, to turn his back. He had chosen to be annoyed by my pain. I realized, in that moment, as the smell of wasted food rose from the trash, that I had no son. The boy I had cooked for was dead. This man, this hollow stranger, had taken his place. I was completely, terrifyingly, alone. I did not sleep that night. I sat on the edge of the small, uncomfortable bed in my windowless room and listened. The penthouse was designed for silence, to mute the city. But it could not mute the sound of my son and his wife. I heard them. Their voices were muffled through the thick walls, but the cadence was sharp, angry. I heard Sabrina's voice, high and cutting, like a scalpel. And I heard Leo's, a low, frustrated rumble, the sound of a man trying to placate a fire. It went on for hours. I knew what they were arguing about. I was the disease in their perfect house. I was the grit in the gears of their high-performance marriage. I was still sitting there, in the same clothes as the day before, when the sun came up, sending sterile grey light into the hallway. He found me just after 8. Leo. He was dressed for work in an expensive, slim-fit suit, but his face was exhausted. His eyes were puffy and red, and he couldn't look at me. He just stared at a point on the wall just over my shoulder. "Mom," he said. His voice was hoarse. "Mom, I don't think this is working out." I said nothing. I just looked at this man who had grown inside my body, this man whose fevers I had cooled, whose scraped knees I had bandaged. I looked at this stranger. It's just the tension, he stammered, running a hand through his hair. It's too much. She's under a lot of stress. You know, her brand, the sponsors. It's a high-pressure world. He was still talking, but I wasn't really listening. I was just watching his mouth form words of betrayal. He was justifying. He was blaming the abstract concept of stress instead of the human being who had thrown my food in the trash. She gave me an ultimatum. Mum. He finally choked out, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. She said it's either you or it's her. There it was. The clean, simple transaction. I had been weighed against an influencer's brand, and I had been found wanting. I have to choose my marriage, he said. And this time he did look at me, his eyes pleading for me to understand, for me to make this easy on him. I have to protect what we're building. Your presence here. It's just not compatible with our life. It's affecting her image. I finally found my voice. It was a dry, rasping thing. Your image? Our image? He corrected, pulling back, his defensiveness making him cold. He reached into his suit jacket. He pulled out a small wad of cash and held it out to me. 10 $50 bills. $500. I booked you a room, he said, the words coming fast now, a script he had rehearsed. It's at the extended stay out on the highway. I paid for 1 week. That should be enough time. Enough time for you to get organized, to figure out your next steps. 1 week. $500. The price of a mother. I looked at the money in his hand. I looked at his face. He was my son, and he was evicting me. He was firing me from the job of being his mother. I see, I said. My voice was calm. The shock was so profound, so deep. It had frozen all other emotions. There was no room for tears or rage. There was only the cold, hard fact of it. He pushed the money into my hand. His fingers were clammy. I already called a car. It'll be here in 10 minutes. He wouldn't even drive me himself. He wouldn't be seen with me, his discarded mother, at a cheap motel. He outsourced the final, filthy task. I stood up. I went to the closet and pulled out my small suitcase, the one I had arrived with. It didn't take long to pack. I had almost nothing. I had brought so little of my old life into this new, sterile one. I zipped the bag. I walked past him, down the long white hall. I didn't look back at him. I couldn't. I was at the front door, my hand on the sleek, cold metal handle, when I heard her, Sabrina. Her voice, no longer muffled, drifted from their bedroom. She was on the phone, and she was laughing. Oh, my God. Yes, she said, her voice high and performative. It's finally done. I can literally breathe again. You have no idea what it's been like. I paused, my hand frozen on the door. No, I'm serious, she continued, her laugh ringing out. The entire apartment, it reeked. I'm finally getting that old lady smell out of here for good. Time to light some sage. The elevator doors opened. I stepped in. I did not look back. I pressed the button for the lobby, and as the doors slid shut, I watched the reflection of their white, perfect apartment disappear. The extended stay motel was not a motel. It was a repository for human misery, set far back from the highway, nestled between a truck stop and a pawn shop. The rooms smelled of stale cigarettes, old grease, and bleach. The man at the front desk, separated from me by a thick sheet of scratched plexiglass, had barely looked up as he took my money. I locked the deadbolt and the chain, but I did not feel safe. I could hear everything. A man shouting in the room next door, a woman weeping, trucks idling, their diesel engines vibrating through the thin walls all night. I sat on the bed, my suitcase at my feet, and did not move until morning. The week passed in a blur of terror and shame. The $500 melted like snow in summer. Each night at the desk, the man would take another chunk of it. I ate from the gas station next door, packaged muffins and bitter coffee. I called Leo. I called him 12 times. Each call went straight to his voicemail, his bright, professional voice saying, "You've reached Leo. I'm busy scaling solutions, but your call is important to me." I sent him texts. "Leo, please. I don't know what to do. Leo, my week is almost up. I need to talk to you. Son, please just call me." Under each message, the two small grey words that confirmed my erasure read. He was seeing them. He was seeing my pleas, and he was actively ignoring them. He was swiping my desperation away. On the 7th day, my key card stopped working. I went to the front desk, my heart pounding. The man looked at me, his eyes bored. "Checkout was 11, he said. "You staying?" I need more time." I stammered. "Time is money," he said, and gestured to the rate sheet. I had $43 left. I was on the street. I stood by the highway, my small suitcase in my hand. As cars rushed past, I tried to find an apartment. I walked into leasing offices, my clothes rumpled, my hair unwashed. They would look at me, smile a tight, plastic smile, and hand me an application. "We'll need proof of income, 3 times the rent," they'd say. "And first month's rent plus a security deposit." I had $43. The first night, I found my way to a hospital, St. Thomas. I walked into the emergency room waiting area. It was bright, smelled of disinfectant and sickness, and was filled with the quiet suffering of others. I found a hard plastic chair in a corner and sat down. I put my suitcase by my feet and pretended to read a year-old magazine. When a nurse asked who I was waiting for, I mumbled, "My brother. He's in surgery." She nodded and moved on. I stayed there all night, under the awful fluorescent lights, drifting in and out of a terrified, fitful sleep. I did it again the next night, but on the 3rd morning, a security guard, a kind man with tired eyes, gently touched my shoulder. "Ma'am," he said, his voice low, "you can't stay here anymore. We know." The shame was a physical thing, a hot flush that covered my entire body. I grabbed my suitcase and fled. I had nowhere else to go. I had heard of one place. A name whispered. The Nashville Rescue Mission. It was in a part of town I had only ever driven through. My doors locked. I walked for 2 miles. I stood across the street, watching. I saw women who looked broken. Their faces were hard, their eyes empty. I, Margaret, a 58-year-old former library clerk, a woman who had owned a home, raised a son, and hosted dinner parties, was one of them. I crossed the street. The intake was a blur of questions I was too numb to answer. I was assigned a bed. Not a room. A bed. It was a metal bunk in a large, cold room with 6 other women. My suitcase was locked away. I was given a thin blanket and a pillow with no case. That night, I lined up for dinner. I held a plastic tray. and a woman who looked as tired as I felt slopped a ladle of thin, watery soup into a plastic bowl. I sat at a long folding table, surrounded by the sounds of coughing and quiet weeping. I looked at my reflection in the back of my spoon. The woman staring back was a stranger. Her hair was lank and grey, her eyes wide with a terror so deep it had become a permanent part of her expression. I was invisible. In Leo and Sabrina's world, I was an old lady smell, an inconvenience to be thrown out. Here, in this world, I was just one more hungry, invisible woman. I was no one. I was nothing. And no one in the world, not even my own son, was coming to find me. To survive in the shelter, you had to follow the rules. You had to wake up at 5 in the morning, shower in the cold, and be out of the dormitory by 7. If you wanted help, real help, you had to register for it. A caseworker, a tired woman whose eyes held no judgment, only a deep, abiding weariness, sat me down at a metal desk. "I need your documents." "Margaret," she said. "Social security card, birth certificate, any form of identification. We need to get you into the system to apply for housing aid and food benefits." The system. I had spent my life managing a system of books and files. Now I was just a misplaced file myself. They kept my suitcase in a locked storage room. A guard retrieved it for me, and I carried it to a corner of the common room. It was the only place in the building that was relatively quiet, aside from the constant, dull roar of the ventilation system. I sat on the floor and unzipped the bag. Inside, beneath the 2 shirts and 1 pair of pants that now constituted my wardrobe, was my old accordion file. It was brown, brittle with age, the elastic strap long since broken. It contained the paper trail of my 58 years, my birth certificate, my library retirement papers, immunization records, and, shoved in the very back, a thick, bulging section labelled Divorce Arthur. I hadn't opened that section in perhaps 20 years. Why would I? It was a monument to a failure, a life I had left behind. Arthur, my ex-husband. He had passed away, I'd heard, several years ago. Our split was clean, or so I had thought. He had moved on. He married again, a younger woman. Though I'd heard that, too, had ended. He was just a ghost. My fingers, stiff from the cold in the building, fumbled through the papers. I was looking for the small, laminated square of my social security card. Instead, my hand brushed against a large, heavy envelope. It was made of thick, creamy vellum, the kind of paper that costs $5 a sheet. It was rigid. It was sealed, not with glue, but with a dark blue wax emblem I did not recognize. I pulled it out. It was addressed to Margaret Wallace at my old apartment in Nashville. The return address was for a law firm, Stanton and Gray, attorneys at law, with an address in Wilmington, Delaware. I knew that name. Stanton and Gray. Arthur had mentioned them once, long ago, in a context I couldn't recall. I looked at the postmark. It was dated 3 years ago, just 2 weeks after the day I'd heard Arthur had died. I remembered it now. This very envelope. It had arrived at my old apartment. I had seen the formal, intimidating legal heading and felt a wave of exhaustion. I assumed it was some final, messy piece of bureaucracy, a bill, a claim, a demand from his second ex-wife. I couldn't bear it. I was grieving the man he had been, not the stranger he became, and I wanted no part of his complicated, messy death. So I had done what I always did with things that overwhelmed me. I filed it away, unopened, in the divorce folder, and I forgot. Now, sitting on the cold linoleum floor of a homeless shelter, I had nothing left to lose. My hands trembled as I broke the wax seal. The document inside was a letter, just 3 pages long, printed on the same heavy paper. It was addressed to me. "Dear Mrs. Wallace," it began. I stared at the name. Mrs. Wallace. No one had called me that in 2 decades. The letter was from Arthur's personal attorney. I read the first paragraph. I read it again. The legal terms swam before my eyes, but I forced them into focus. "We are contacting you regarding the estate of your late husband, Arthur Wallace. Our records indicate that you are his legal surviving spouse." I stopped. I thought I had misread. Surviving spouse. It had to be a mistake. We were divorced. We had signed papers. I kept reading. The lawyer explained, in cold, procedural detail. The divorce filing, 23 years prior, had contained a significant and material error in the final paperwork. A crucial signature on the final decree of dissolution was missing, and the filing was subsequently rejected by the court clerk. It was never resubmitted. Whether this omission was an intentional act on the part of Mr. Wallace or a simple clerical oversight, the letter read, "The result is the same. Your marriage was never legally dissolved." My heart stopped. The noise of the common room, the coughing, the shuffling of feet, it all faded away. The letter continued. Arthur's second marriage had been legally voided, as it was technically bigamous. He had died, legally, with only one wife, me. Margaret, a 58-year-old woman in a homeless shelter, was his widow. I tried to breathe. What did this mean? Arthur wasn't rich. He was a simple accountant. Was I now responsible for his debts? Was this a trick? My eyes scanned down the page, past the legal definitions, to the final paragraph. While your legal status as Mr. Wallace's spouse is a matter of immediate significance, it is not, however, the primary purpose of this correspondence. I turned the page, and that was not all. I turned the page, my fingers stiff and clumsy. The letter was not about the divorce. It was about what came before it. The primary purpose of this correspondence, the letter continued, concerns a separate legal entity, a holding company, established by Mr. Wallace approximately 30 years ago, during the second year of your marriage. I frowned. I remembered nothing of this. Mr. Wallace, a man of considerable financial foresight, established M Holdings, LLC, using your name and social security number, a common tax sheltering strategy at the time. The M, Mrs. Wallace, stands for Margaret. I was reading the words, but they were abstract, meaningless. Arthur, a simple accountant, a man of financial foresight. The letter explained that he had seeded this company with a nominal amount of capital. A one-time investment, it read, of $20,000. He used that money to purchase a large, speculative block of shares in a nascent data processing company based in Texas, a company I had never heard of. And then, nothing. The divorce proceedings began a few years later. The company, M Holdings, LLC, legally and entirely in my name, was never mentioned. It fell through the cracks. The lawyer suggested Arthur had either forgotten it, or, given the clerical error in the divorce, had perhaps intended to leave it dormant as a hidden nest egg. For 30 years, it had remained untouched. The shares in the nascent data processing company had just sat there. I felt a faint, ridiculous flicker of hope, which I immediately extinguished. $20,000. Even if it had grown, what would it be? 40,050. Not enough to get me out of this room. The letter was 3 years old. This was probably worthless. I took the pages to the caseworker at the metal desk. Her name was Ms. Evans? I'm sorry, I whispered, my voice thick with shame. I don't understand this legal language. Is this a bill? Do I owe money? Ms. Evans, who had seen every form of human desperation, read the letter. She read it once, her expression neutral. She read it a second time, and her eyes widened. Margaret, she said, her voice dropping. This firm, Stanton and Gray, this is not a bill. She pointed to the phone on her desk. We are calling them, right now. My heart hammered against my ribs. But it's in Delaware. It's long distance. She ignored me, already dialing. She navigated the automated menus with professional efficiency, then spoke. Yes, I am calling on behalf of Mrs. Margaret Wallace regarding the M Holdings, LLC account. I am her case manager at Metropolitan Social Services. That title, case manager, worked like a magic word. We were put on hold. Music played. A soft, expensive classical piece. A new voice came on the line. It was male, crisp, and sounded like old money. This is Peter Stanton. Am I speaking with Mrs. Wallace? I leaned forward, my hands shaking. Yes, I croaked. Yes, this is Margaret Wallace. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. My God, Mrs. Wallace, we have been trying to locate you for 3 years. We had assumed, frankly, you were deceased. No, I said, the word catching in my throat. I'm not. Mrs. Wallace, he said, his voice all business. The initial investment, Mr. Wallace, made in your name. The technology shares, they appreciated significantly. But that's not the full story. Mr. Wallace was a very shrewd man. He didn't just let the assets sit. What do you mean? I asked, my knuckles white on the edge of the desk. 20 years ago, he cashed out the original shares for a substantial sum. He then used M Holdings to begin acquiring commercial real estate here in Nashville. Ms. Evans and I locked eyes. He bought properties, Mr. Stanton continued, in areas that were, at the time, undeveloped. The Gulch, Germantown, areas that, as you know, have exploded. He bought buildings, I whispered. He bought 3 office buildings and a parking garage. Mrs. Wallace. The portfolio has been in our trust management for decades. Self-sustaining. The leases pay the expenses, and the profits have been reinvested. I had to know. The $20,000, I stammered. What is it? What is it worth now? Mr. Stanton paused. I heard the soft click of a keyboard. The initial investment is irrelevant. What matters is the portfolio. As of the end of the last quarter, the net asset value of M Holdings, LLC, of which you are the sole and undisputed owner, is $42,700,000 and change. I didn't make a sound. The room tilted. 42 million. The words were just noise. They meant nothing. Mrs. Wallace. I couldn't speak. Ms. Evans grabbed the receiver. Mr. Stanton. She's in shock. She's currently a resident at the Nashville Rescue Mission. The silence that followed was profound. It was the sound of a man who managed millions, trying to process a reality that did not compute. "I see," he finally said, his voice tight. "Mrs. Wallace, listen to me. You are not a resident there. You are one of the wealthiest women in the state of Tennessee. I am dispatching a car. It will be at your location in 10 minutes. Do not move." The line clicked dead. I stood up. My legs felt like water. Ms. Evans, her face pale, just pointed at the door. "Go," she whispered. "Get your bag." I walked to the storage room and retrieved my suitcase. I walked back through the common room, past the women waiting in line for a meal. I walked to the front door, the same heavy steel door I had entered as a beggar. I pushed it open. The air outside was cold and damp. A black, shining sedan, the kind I had only seen in movies, glided to a stop at the curb. A driver in a black suit emerged and opened the rear door. He looked at me, my rumpled clothes, my unwashed hair, my cheap suitcase. He did not blink. "Mrs. Wallace?" he asked. I nodded. He took my suitcase from my hand. "We have a suite waiting for you at the Hermitage." I slid into the plush leather seat. The door closed with a silent, heavy thud, sealing off the sounds of the street, the smells of the shelter, and the entire life I had known. The car pulled away from the curb, leaving the mission, my son, and the woman I had been, behind in the gutter. The Hermitage Hotel was not just a building, it was a fortress of old-world luxury. I wasn't taken to a room. I was escorted to the presidential suite, a sprawling set of rooms on the top floor that was larger than my entire old apartment. It had a fireplace, a grand piano, and a bathroom carved from marble. The first thing I did was run a bath, the scalding hot. I scrubbed my skin until it was raw, trying to wash off the smell of the shelter, the grit of the motel, the invisible stain of my son's penthouse. The next morning, my new lawyer arrived. She was not the man from the phone. Her name was Ms. Pines, a partner from the firm's Nashville office. She was in her late 40s, dressed in a severe black suit, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She did not coddle me. She did not offer sympathy. She offered competence. She placed a platinum credit card on the antique desk. "This is linked to the M Holdings operating account. Mrs. Wallace," she said, her voice crisp. "Your immediate liquidity is effectively unlimited." I looked at the card. "I will not be Mrs. Wallace any longer," I said. My voice was quiet, but it did not tremble. "That name belongs to a man who deceived me and a son who abandoned me. My name, my father's name, is Mendoza. You will call me Ms. Mendoza." "Ms." Pines raised a single, perfect eyebrow. A small, approving smile touched her lips. "Of course. Ms. Mendoza. Now, our first priority is to secure your assets. The second is to secure you, your appearance." "I am aware," I said, looking down at my shelter-issued clothes. "I look like what I am, a refugee. Let's fix that." My first act as a wealthy woman was not one of joy. It was an exorcism. I took the hotel car to the most expensive department store in Green Hills. I walked in, and the sales associates looked right through me, the invisible woman again. I walked to the first one I saw, a woman dripping in jewelry. "I need a complete wardrobe," I said. She started to direct me toward the mid-priced racks. I pulled out the platinum card. "I need you to throw away the clothes I am currently wearing. I said, my voice as cold as the marble in my new bathroom. And then, I want power suits, silk blouses, a cashmere coat, black, and new shoes. The woman's attitude shifted so fast it was almost comical. For 2 hours. I was a doll to be dressed. I shed the skin of Margaret, the dowdy librarian, the discarded help. I emerged from the dressing room as someone else. I was wearing a charcoal grey suit that fit me perfectly, a cream-coloured silk blouse, and low, elegant heels. I had them put my old clothes, my last connection to the shelter, into a bag. I left it in the store's trash bin. From there, I went to a salon. Cut it, I told the stylist. All of it. He cut away the straggling, greying mess. He gave me a short, sharp, modern cut that framed my face, accentuating my cheekbones. He dyed it a deep, rich chestnut brown, a colour I hadn't seen in 20 years. When he turned me to the mirror, I finally recognized the woman staring back. She was not Margaret. She was not Mrs. Wallace. She was Mendoza. For the next 2 weeks, the suite at the Hermitage became my office. Ms. Pines became my tutor. She brought in financial analysts, accountants, and asset managers. They came in, bowed and scraped, and tried to overwhelm me with spreadsheets and projections. They underestimated me. They forgot I was a librarian. For 30 years, my job was to acquire, catalogue, and understand complex information. I was not intimidated by their numbers. I had a mind built for details. I learned about commercial lease law. I learned about depreciation, capital gains, and shell corporations. I absorbed it all. The anger that had been simmering in me, the cold, helpless rage, I channeled it. I turned it from heat into focus. You have a remarkable aptitude for this, Ms. Mendoza. Ms. Pines noted on a Friday afternoon as I pointed out a discrepancy in a zoning report. I've been underestimated my entire life, I said. It's a mistake I do not intend to repeat. Now, I am tired of summaries. I want the full report. I want a complete, itemized list of every single asset held by M Holdings, every building, every lease agreement, every tenant. That's a significant amount of data. The asset manager stammered. I have time, I said. Miss Pines had it delivered within an hour. A thick, bound document. I sat in my suite, overlooking the city, and I read. I read for hours. I saw the parking garage near the arena. I saw a low-rise office building in Germantown. And then, on page 14, my finger stopped. It traced the name of a tenant, and then the name of the building they occupied. A cold, electric jolt went through me. I stared at the address, a familiar one. The Pinnacle Building, downtown. I knew that building. I knew that name. My blood ran cold, then hot. Ms. Pines, I said, my voice perfectly level. Get the asset manager on the phone. I have questions about one of my tenants. Ms. Pines arrived within the hour, her face a neutral mask. I had the portfolio open on the desk. The Pinnacle Building, I said, my voice flat. I tapped the tenant list. Tenant number 1, Scale-Tech Solutions. They are the primary lessee. Correct, 3 floors. Ms. Pines checked her tablet. That is correct. Ms. Mendoza. They hold the anchor lease, a 5-year term, 2 years remaining. Why? Scale-Tech Solutions, I said, savouring the syllables. My son, Leo, is a project manager there, a rising star, I believe he calls himself. Ms. Pines's expression did not change, but her eyes sharpened. I see. That is a complication. No, I replied. It is an opportunity. Now, let's look at tenant 204, Elysian Beauty Concepts, a boutique cosmetics firm. She nodded. A smaller lease, just office space, not a storefront. They pay on time. Solid tenants. Elysian Beauty, I said. They are the primary sponsor for a lifestyle influencer named Sabrina, my son's wife. They fund her entire brand. For the first time, I saw a flicker of something in my lawyer's eyes. It was respect. Well, she said, that is efficient. They are both in my building, I stated. It was not a question. It was a confirmation. My prey, gathered neatly under one roof. My roof. Ms. Pines, I said, leaning back in the plush hotel chair. What are my rights as a landlord? Regarding what their leases are current. Regarding the building itself, I read the lease agreements. All of them. There is a clause. Section 21. B. Termination by landlord due to structural necessity. Tell me about it. A slow, cold smile spread across Ms. Pines's face. The renovation clause, standard boilerplate, but Arthur put it in all his contracts. It gives the landlord the right to terminate all leases, with notice, in the event of a major structural overhaul, demolition, or systemic upgrade. And what constitutes notice? 60 days, she replied. 60 days. I repeated. It was perfect, not immediate, which might look suspicious, but not long enough for anyone to make a comfortable plan. It was just enough time to panic. I am concerned about the building's HVAC system, I said, my voice smooth as silk. And the wiring, it's 30 years old. It feels unsafe, a liability. I cannot, in good conscience, allow my tenants to operate in such conditions. I've decided to shut the building down for a comprehensive structural and systemic upgrade. Ms. Mendoza, Ms. Pines said, the smile in her voice now. That will be an extraordinarily expensive and disruptive undertaking. It will cost you millions in lost rent and renovation costs. I am worth $42 million, I said, my voice like ice. I can afford it. Make the calls. I want the notices sent by certified mail tomorrow morning. N Holdings regrets the inconvenience, but tenant safety is our paramount concern. The first call I received was not from my son. It was from the CEO of ScaleTech Solutions, a man I had never met. He begged, he pleaded, he threatened. I had Ms. Pines take the call. She politely informed him that the decision was final, that M Holdings was a vast entity, and that the owner was not available. Chaos. I learned was my new weapon. ScaleTech Solutions was, as Leo had boasted, a rising star. But rising stars are fragile. They run on investor money and momentum. A sudden, forced relocation was a catastrophe. The cost of breaking their anchor lease, of finding 3 new floors of office space in Nashville's skyrocketing market, and the sheer logistical nightmare of moving their servers, it was a bullet to the heart of their budget. It stopped their momentum dead, but I was not finished. A week later, Elysian Beauty Concepts, the cosmetics sponsor, also began its panicked exit from my building. The disruption was a mortal blow to their small operation. They were a boutique brand. They couldn't absorb the cost of a sudden move, new deposits, and building out a new office. They had to cut costs, and they had to do it fast. Their most expensive, least essential line item, a lifestyle influencer whose contract was up for renewal. Sabrina's world ended not with a bang, but with an email. Her biggest sponsor, facing its own crisis, terminated her contract. The reason they gave was strategic realignment due to unforeseen operational costs. They cut her off. The free products, the sponsored trips, the 5-figure checks for posting a single photo, all of it vanished. I sat in my suite at the Hermitage, sipping tea I had ordered from room service. I pictured the two of them, in their glass penthouse, on the same night. Leo, his phone burning up with furious emails from his superiors, his career suddenly unstable, his star falling, and Sabrina, staring at an email, realizing the money, the very fuel of her existence, had just been cut off. I had not touched them. I had not spoken to them. I had simply renovated my property. I had become an invisible, powerful force, an unforeseen operational cost. They were both wounded, both bleeding income and security, and they were trapped in that white, sterile apartment, with no one to blame but each other. The noose was in place. Now, I would simply wait and watch it tighten. I did not hire a private investigator to harm them. I hired him to listen. I paid a discreet service a significant amount of money to place a simple, legal listening device in the hallway outside their penthouse door. I did not want to miss the results of my experiment. The first 2 weeks. According to the audio transcripts, Ms. Pines delivered to my suite each morning, were filled with confusion and high-pitched panic. Then, the real sounds began. Scale-tech solutions, unable to absorb the catastrophic financial blow of their relocation, did exactly what I knew they would. They announced a massive layoff, a structural reorganization to save the company. The first to go were not the vital engineers, but the redundant, expensive layers of management, the rising stars. My son, Leo, the star project manager, was fired. He was made redundant, useless. The day he was fired, the audio transcripts became exquisite. I read the words over my morning coffee. Sabrina, her income from Elysian beauty already gone, shrieked at him. The word failure was used. Repeatedly. You're a failure. Leo, you had one job. You were supposed to be the stable one. He, in turn, roared back, his voice thick with a panic I had never heard from him. You? This is your fault. Your insane spending, I'm drowning, and you're still ordering $500 face creams. You're a gold digger, a shallow, empty fraud. Their lifestyle was built on 2 incomes. Now, it had none. Their perfect, white-on-white penthouse was not owned by me. I did not need to own it. I only needed to know that they could no longer afford it. The rent on a place like that, in that building, was astronomical. The first of the month came and went. The second, I knew, from my own asset manager, that the corporation that owned their building was notoriously unforgiving. The shouting matches stopped. They were replaced, according to my transcripts, by a cold, terrified silence, broken only by the sound of drawers opening and closing. Sabrina, true to her nature, saw the sinking ship and secured the only lifeboat. On a Tuesday morning, while Leo was out, she had a car service pick her up. She left her apartment key on the white marble counter, next to a stack of bills addressed to my son. She was on a flight to California, back to her parents, by noon. That evening, she posted a new entry on her blog. It was a long, breathless piece about authenticity and the brave, painful choice to remove toxic, low-vibrational energy from her life. She was reinventing herself as a survivor. She never mentioned Leo by name, but she didn't have to. She was the victim. He was the toxicity. Leo was left alone in that vast, empty apartment. No job, no wife, no future, and a mountain of debt, all in his name. 10 days later, the final notice was taped to his door, the legal eviction. He had 72 hours to vacate the premises. He was trapped. He had no money, no credit, no one. His expensive, curated network of contacts had evaporated the moment he was fired. His friends, the ones he was on the video call with while his mother wept, were suddenly all too busy to take his calls. He had burned every bridge, starting with me, and now, at the absolute bottom, with the sheriff's department just days away. He finally remembered the one person he had discarded like trash. My phone, a new, sleek device I kept on my desk, buzzed. I looked at the screen. The name flashed. A name I had not seen in months. Leo. He had ignored my 12 calls from the motel. He had read my desperate texts and swiped them away. I let it ring. Once. Twice. 3 times. I let him sit in that empty apartment and listen to the sound of his only remaining lifeline, ringing and ringing, unanswered. On the 4th ring, I picked up. I did not say hello. I just waited. I heard a sound, a choked, wet gasp. Mom. His voice was unrecognizable. It was the voice of a man who had been completely broken. The arrogance, the confidence, the slick salesman charm, it was all gone. Mom. Oh, God. Mom. Please. I'm in trouble. I'm in so much trouble. I have nowhere to go. Please. Mom. Can you help me? Can I come and stay with you? I held the phone to my ear, listening to the pathetic, wet sounds of his collapse. This broken thing was my son. I have nowhere to go. Mom. He wept. They're kicking me out. Sabrina left me. I have nothing. Please. I just need a place to sleep. Just for a few days. My voice was calm. The voice I now used with my asset managers. I am available for a meeting, I said. Tonight? 9 p.m. Oh, God, thank you, he sobbed, relief flooding his voice. Thank you. Mom, where your place? The hotel? No, I said. The Pinnacle building, downtown. Use the freight entrance at the back. It's the only one that's unlocked. There was a pause. The Pinnacle, Mom. Why, that's my old office. The place is empty. It's dark. 9 p.m., I repeated, and I hung up. I arrived at 8:30. I had the building's custodian set up a single, harsh work light in the center of the vast, 3-story marble lobby. The rest of the cavernous space was left in deep shadow. I stood in the pool of light, my hands clasped behind my back. I was wearing a charcoal grey suit, tailored perfectly, and my heels were sharp on the stone floor. I waited. At 9:02, I heard the freight elevator door whine open down the hall, followed by the sound of hesitant, shuffling footsteps. He emerged from the darkness into the edge of the light. He looked derelict. His expensive suit was wrinkled, as if he'd slept in it. His face was pale, unshaven, his eyes red and frantic. He was carrying a duffel bag, the only thing he'd salvaged from his life. He saw me, standing in the light, and he froze. He was staring at my hair, my suit, my posture. He was trying to reconcile the woman in front of him with the pathetic, weeping mother he had discarded. Mom, he whispered, his voice cracking. What is this? What are you doing here? This place it's condemned, or something. I let the silence stretch out, let his confusion mount. The lobby was so quiet I could hear his ragged breathing. I'm considering which HVAC system to replace, I said. My voice was not his mother's. It was the voice of Ms. Mendoza. It echoed, bouncing off the distant marble walls. The electrical needs a complete overhaul as well, a significant capital expenditure. He just stared at me, his mouth half open. What are you talking about? I took a step toward him. This building, it's one of my properties. After all, I said, my voice dropping, cold and clear. I own it. I am M. Holdings. His face went white, not just pale, a bloodless, waxy white. He understood. The worklight reflected in his wide, unblinking eyes. He connected the dots, one by one. The lease, the 60-day notice, Scale Tech, Elysian Beauty, his job, his wife, his entire life, evaporating. It was you, he breathed. It was not a question. It was all you. The duffel bag dropped from his hand. His legs gave out. He did not just kneel. He collapsed, falling onto his hands and knees on the cold marble floor, right at my feet. A terrible, animal sound came out of him, a wail of utter despair. Mum, please, he begged, tears and mucus running down his face. Please, I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. He confessed everything, the words tumbling out in a filthy, pathetic rush. He admitted he chose Sabrina for her image, for how she looked, for how she made him look. He admitted he saw her throw my food away, that he saw the pain in my eyes, and that he chose to look away because it was easier. He said he was a coward. He was weak. He groveled. He begged me for forgiveness. He begged me to save him. I looked down at this creature, this man who was my son, destroyed by his own choices. I felt nothing. The rage was gone. The hurt was gone. There was only the cold, quiet vacuum of the truth. I stepped closer, forcing him to look up at me. You threw away my food. Leo? I said, my voice cutting through his sobs. You stood by and watched her call my love poison. But the real poison, the real sickness, was always your cowardice. He reached out, his hand trembling, trying to grab the hem of my suit jacket. I stepped back, out of his reach. I turned my back on him. I began to walk away. The only sound in the vast, dark lobby was the sharp, definitive click, click, click of my heels on the marble floor as I walked toward the main entrance, leaving my son, my only child, alone in the darkness of the empty building I owned. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from, so drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Make sure you subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary. Give this video a big like and show your support by hitting that hype button so more people can hear this.